Welcome back, guys. We have another data mine today. It's going to be for the Interlude of Illusions event, which is a French mini event. They announced it during the last live stream we covered on Friday. So we'll go through that whole event today, and it shouldn't take that long, which is good because the last two videos I've uploaded to my channel have both been over 40 minutes. If I sound a little bit different today, that's because I'm recording from a new location and with new equipment. That should go back to normal for future videos, so don't worry about it. So the actual event isn't going to be bringing anything that groundbreaking. In fact, the only new thing coming out of it is a new item. This is a purple joint exercise coin. It's going to have the generic 500 HP stats. So while that's not bad, that's the default that most decent items have these days. The interesting part of this item is in the skill, which gives the equipped ship 3% less damage taken from Italian and French ships, both sides of the French faction. This could actually be unique and functional if you're fighting against a French or Italian boss. Funny enough, in PvP, if enough people start using Alsace, then maybe it even becomes useful there. Overall, though, there are better items at this 500 HP stat level. Could be fun to have around, but 3% damage reduction for 3 minor factions is not a big deal. Before we get into the event, let's talk about the next cruise mission pass. Kasumi META is going to be the next meta ship coming in the cruise mission. This starts at the next season, so while it is in the data mine today, you cannot obtain her on release today. Stat-wise, she looks like an upgrade to Kasumi. She's got over that 600 torpedo stat mark there and a decent amount of more HP. The efficiency is a little bit lower or about the same, so we'll call it about a wash, maybe slightly better than the base Kasumi. Skill number 1, all destroyers in your Vanguard fleet, sorry missile destroyers in your main fleet, get 15% torpedo stat, and when she fires a torpedo weapon, she's going to fire a special barrage. This is good. This is better than her base version, which only buffs the Sakura Empire by their torpedo stat, so she buffs all of the destroyers in your Vanguard. Sweet and short. There we go. Skill number 2, we have damage taken to herself is reduced by 10%. When another ship in your Vanguard fleet drops below 10%, that's a very low threshold, Kasumi META herself is going to go invincible for 8 seconds. That's a long time, or she's at least going to evade all attacks, and she's going to heal the damage of the other ship that dropped below 10% HP, 1% HP for every second. So over 8 seconds, that's going to be 8% boost. Then if that ship is still below 12% HP, which is decently likely if it was already under 10% when it started, then she's going to additionally heal another 5%. So she has the potential to heal between 8 and 13% off this skill. Now, I like this skill. She goes invincible, which is weird because you kind of want the ship that she's targeting to go invincible, not herself. However, it is a decent heal. 13% is a lot, but it triggers way too late. This needs to trigger at not 10%. It needs to trigger at like 30% probably. Overall, this is a very good ship. It's very functional. It has a lot of cohesion. In fact, it's an upgrade over the regular Kasumi, and Kasumi could be used. She definitely had her place. She wasn't the best in slot by any means, but if you brought her in a proper fleet, she could definitely put in work. And this is something that you can use without even having the retrofit. Like Kasumi didn't really work before retrofit, so she's like a post-retrofit Kasumi. She does things a little bit differently. The only thing I'll have to note is I can't help but compare her to Jinsu META. She feels like she's trying to do a very similar thing, having torpedo buffs, having extra barrages with torpedoes in them, and having the ability to go invincible. Jinsu does all those things, but better on every single level. So realistically, you're looking for like a best in slot version. Jinsu META does everything she's going to do, but basically better. However, her art looks really cool. Speaking of looking really cool, the cruise mission that she comes with also has a paid version of Aroma skin, which is pretty cool. And in fact, this whole event is going to have racetrack skins. There's a bunch of racetrack skins. Some of them are hit, some of them are miss. Although I will say the Joffrey L2D does look like a winner, so to speak. So anyway, let me know in the comments if you are planning on purchasing any of these racetrack skins. With that out of the way, items are done, cruise missions are done. We can talk about the event. This is going to be a gacha event. There's going to be only 2 SRs and an elite, no URs, but let's talk about those 3 ships. First off, we'll start with the Vichy France battle cruiser Strasbourg. Strasbourg. And oof, do her stats look like they're bad. The first thing I noticed is that she does get punished like a lot of the French ships in that she does lose one of her shots in her battleship gun at the expense of her preloaded. So she gets a preloaded like most French battleships do, but she's going to lose one of the shots, which gives her a lot less damage. Additionally, her stats look pretty weak if you're comparing her to Richelieu, right? She's got a low firepower and low HP, so she's not very tanky, and her damage is not great. Even though she has the preloaded, she's losing out on a lot of damage from the extra shot and having a low firepower. Now, if you're sitting there being like, well, she's sisters with Dunkirk, so you should compare her stats to Dunkirk, and her stats are higher. Well, Dunkirk is not very good, and Dunkirk is an elite. This is an SR coming out in 2024. Dunkirk is an elite coming back, like, I don't know, 5+ years ago. So, yeah, her stats are a little bit better than her sister Dunkirk, but Richelieu barely sees play, and sheer stats are much worse than Richelieu. So unless the skills completely redefine her, we're not looking at a great ship here. Skill number 1. Reduce the loading time of this ship's first salvo by 50%. Alright, so she gets a preloaded salvo to start, and then her first one comes out at basically half time. So she fires twice really quickly into the battle, so it's kind of like full aggro, I guess. Also, every 20 seconds after the battle, she has a 70% chance to fire a barrage, and this can go up to 100% if you contain 2 Vichy France other ships. So each of them buffs that, by 15%, so 2 other ones gets it to 100% chance. They have to be Vichy France. Free France doesn't count, so that really hurts because the ships you want to pair with her, if you are going to do this, are probably going to be Free France, not Vichy France. 1 cooldown reduction is nice, but probably not enough. Let's move on to skill number 2. She gets a boost in her firepower and her hit stat by 15%. That is helpful. All of your Vichy France Vanguard fleet ships are going to boost their stats 10% for firepower and anti-air. So this is going to help, like, what, Morgador, I guess? She needs all the help she can get, I see. Enemies hit by this ship's main guns are going to take additional damage. 5% more damage from firepower and aviation-based damage from Vichy France ships. So once again, we're locked to literally half of the French faction and the half that is typically worse. At least so far. Overall, this ship is not very good. We have all the downsides that made early French ships weak. Doesn't have a lot of stats that are perfect. It only has 2 skills, and both of those skills are very much severely locked to a very bad faction, which is not just the French faction, but the Vichy French faction. So literally, like, the only good ship they've gotten recently has been in Free France, and you can't even buff that. So this ship is much to be desired. Richelieu came out many, many years ago and is better in every way than this ship. All right, Savage ALM came out tonight. Let's move on to the next ship. And sticking with tradition, I'm probably going to butcher this French name. So next up we have the SR Vichy France Destroyer. She's a Le Fantastique class Léadicieux. Anyway, I'm really excited for this because being in this class, she has 54 speed like her sisters, and that is very fast. So we get to play around with speed fleets here. I hope she brings something to the speed fleet table because that would be so exciting. I'm pumped for her. We'll see if she's any good. Stat-wise, she looks a little bit better in all of her offensive stats, but she gives up a little bit of evasion. Overall, she's sitting pretty much with her sisters with a little bit more aggro built in. Ideally, I would have liked her being more built towards the survivability end, but it's not going to make a big difference. She's very much the same as her sisters for all intensive purposes. All we really cared about was the 54 speed anyway, right? Alright, skill number 1. At the start of the battle, if there are 2 or more French ships, this includes Free France and Vichy France, unlike the last ship we just reviewed, she gets a self boost to her crit rate and her crit damage by 15%. That is kind of nice. She's not meant to do a lot of damage, and I know I said she's more built towards damage than her sisters, but this class of ship is just not going to be doing a lot of damage in general, even though she's doing a little bit better than her sisters, but we'll take the crit rate. Also, every 10 seconds after the start of the battle, she's going to trigger a justice attack. All enemies currently on the screen are going to take 20% more firepower damage from all allied destroyers for 5 seconds, and that was so close. That is like 2 letters from being really good. If that was not locked to destroyers, that would be fantastic if that could boost something in the backline. 20% more firepower damage is a ton, and this would have been an amazing ship, but because it's locked to destroyers, there's not a lot of firepower damage coming off of them, especially if you're using one of your Vanguard slots to be this specific ship who is not going to be dealing a lot of firepower damage to begin with. Also, her self-stat boost is going to be 12% for firepower and torpedo stat every time, and it will stack for the rest of the battle. It stacks max of 5 times. So technically, at 50 seconds into the battle, I know that's a long time, you will be a 60% boost to her firepower and torpedo stat, and that's for the whole battle. So like a 3-minute battle, that's actually kind of interesting. This is a little bit too slow to be super relevant, but it is kind of funny that this stacks to some absurd percentages. And if you put this on a ship that, had real damage, that would be amazing, but it is on a destroyer, so All right, man, this skill keeps going. Every 2 justice attacks, so that's basically every 20 seconds, she's going to fire an additional special barrage, and all of your French Vanguard fleets are going to gain 30% reload and hit stat for 10 seconds. So that's also really funny. There's I feel like this ship again is trying to boost Morgador a lot here. 30% reload matters a lot. I'm a little sad it says Vanguard fleet, because if you could put 30% reload for 10 seconds on something like Alsace, now you start getting very useful again. Man, this skill is long, but it also is a couple words from being completely busted. If it just didn't say Vanguard fleets for this reload buff and it didn't say destroyers for the firepower damage buff, then we're talking about an amazing ship. And now we're talking about a ship that's okay, it's got some components. We're going somewhere, but I'm not sure we're there yet. Skill number 2 starts with a flat 30% boost to her evasion. So all that evasion I talked about, she not having in the base stats, she fixes that with this skill. Hilarious. She's also going to take 20% less damage from all HE sources of damage. So she is light armor. So the most punishing form of damage she's going to receive, she's going to take 20% less damage from that. It's kind of nice. I would have obviously loved it to be more generic, but that's fine. It's actually kind of nice there. Also, when any French Vanguard ship drops below 60%, she's going to boost her own anti-air and anti-submarine warfare by 30% once per battle. So technically that also could include her. So if she's in a fleet alone, she can trigger based on herself. 60% HP is a little bit low, especially if you're playing PvE. And those are 2 stats that are only going to be useful in PvE and in not a lot of PvE anyway. Those are not stats we want to be boosting. There's a lot of other stats that I want to be boosting over those 2, but okay, sure, we can use those. Additionally, when any French Vanguard ship drops below 30%, so same trigger but 30% instead of 60, she's going to heal that ship, not necessarily her, but whatever ship drops, by 10% of their max HP. That could be very useful. And she's going to release a smoke screen that lasts 5 seconds, and that's going to be obviously the 40% evasion rate, and that's a once per battle proc. Now that's, once again, very close. It is neat. 30% is at least a much better trigger than 10% like the other ship. It also triggers on any of the French Vanguards, which includes herself or anyone else that you include with her. And we like smoke screens, although if you're going to be using this ship, you're probably going to be using her because you want to do French speed memes. And smoke screens are ironically one of the few things that are really good with almost everything except probably French speed memes, because they're going to run away from their own smoke screen half the time. Once again, only 5 seconds, only triggers once per battle. I think that this ship is going to struggle to take a place of Le Terrible or Le Indoptable, and that makes me sad because those are 2 really fun ships to play around with. They're not the best, but they're really fun if you want to play a speed fleet, and those are really fun. If you haven't played with one, trust me, play one. And you could run a full speed fleet, so she probably takes that 3rd slot, which is interesting. Yeah, I think she's probably the 3rd best of the French speed fleets from what I see. She does have an all-out assault, and it triggers every 10 times, 5 times if she's max limit broken. So that's nice because that's her max limit break skill. I can't help but feel a little disappointed by this ship, just because I was hoping that she would at least power creep some of the unused French destroyers from a couple years ago. But Le Terrible is still the speed queen, and Le Indoptable still has a more consistent way of making herself invincible, potentially multiple times in really funny fashion, whereas this ship just drops a smokescreen once and adds a little bit of extra crit damage. to a bunch of destroyers. Like, you could fix that by just running the speed fleet memes and adding like a Laffy 2, which has more damage over this. So like, I can't help but feel disappointed. But you know, 54 base speed and being a lay Fantastique class, kind of fun, but dud. Speaking of dud, we have one more ship to go over. We have the heavy cruiser out of Vichy, France, Dupleix. She's an elite class, and I already called on stream that she was going to suck because we showed the barrage that she had and it was terrible. And her stats, well, they suck. Great. She is literally a torpedo heavy cruiser. She's got no main gun +1, and she literally just has torps and a pitiful torp stat. Skill number 1 reads that she gets to boost by 10% her firepower and reload stat. Cool. Nice. And then every 20 seconds after the start of the battle, she has a 70% chance to proc a special barrage. That sucks. And if it fails, which you might actually want it to fail, she gets to heal herself 5%. Woo, she has a heal. Cool. Still slow. And then second skill, for the first 50 seconds of the battle, she gets a boost to her anti-air, evasion, and hit stat by 10%. Cool. But apparently you can't have it forever, just the first 50 seconds. And then after it expires, she gets to do an extra buff of damage dealt by 10%, and she gets damage taken increased by 8%. So usually that's a minus, and when I looked at it, thought it was a minus, and I was like, oh, that's gonna be good. No, she increases the damage she's gonna take. So yeah, she increases the damage she deals, but she increases the damage she takes. So yeah, you wait 50 seconds, which is really slow, so she can get a modest boost at the expense of taking a huge hit to damage, and she's already not tanky. Ship's terrible. Confirmed. All right, overall, this event was kind of a dud. Not gonna say that I didn't expect it, but I was hoping at least the destroyer would be fun, and I guess it is kind of fun, but there's not a lot here. If you need to skip this event, totally skip this event. Like, you're here for the fleet tech and the collection rate only. We do have some important events coming up very soon, so if you don't have those cubes, this is a perfect event to skip. But obviously, the name of the game in Azure Lane is collect a waifu, collection rate needs to be high, and we like fleet tech, so I'll be pulling for this stuff. Hopefully they don't screw me. Good luck on your gacha pulls, guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.